Stone Age Brain versus Screen Age. Dr. Cytowic on tech addiction, virtual autism, and brain energy. Is your brain trapped in the Stone Age while your life is in the Screen Age? Join us as we welcome neurologist and author Dr. Richard Cytowic to discuss his groundbreaking work on the impact of excessive screen use. Discover why our brains are hardwired for a prehistoric world and now big tech exploits this, leading to screen addiction and depleting our brain's finite energy. Learn about virtual autism and its effects on developing brains, as well as the role of dopamine, the orientating reflex, and the importance of silence. This conversation will reveal the secrets behind our susceptibility to digital devices and offer practical strategies to break free and reclaim your energy and focus. Welcome to the Wellness Driven Life Show, where you're about to go on a wellness driven ride. Let me share a little bit about the incredible guests that we have with us today. Dr. Richard Cytowic is a renowned neurologist and author who explores the intersection of neuroscience and modern technology. His latest book, Your Stone Age Brain in the Screen Age, examines why our brains are susceptible to digital devices and offers strategies for finding balance in a tech-driven world. Dr. Cytowic is also known for his pioneering work on synesthesia. I'm not going to say it right. Let's have him say it. And the science of human consciousness. I am so pleased to help welcome to our stage today, Dr. Richard Cytowic. Welcome.
Thanks for having me here. I appreciate it.
And you're welcome.
Synesthesia. Everybody knows the word anesthesia, which means no sensation. So synesthesia means joined or coupled sensations. So there are children born with 2, 3, or all 5 of their senses hooked together so that my voice, for example, is not just something that they hear, but that they also see it or feel it or taste it or sense it as a physical touch. And they're shocked to learn that not everybody is like them.
Oh, I would love to talk about that too today, because it was another difficult. Time. I mentioned to you, I said, wow, it was really difficult to be able to come up with a good topic for today to share with our audience, because Dr. Cytowic, you are so gifted in so many things, all of the things you love to share with the world and dabble in and research and write books on. So this is going to be an exciting conversation.
Yes. Well, I love doing what I do. So what can I say?
Well, and that's when we bring the most wonderful things into the world. Let's share a little bit more about you so the audience can get to know you.
What do you want to know?
I want to know a little of your background. How did you get started on wanting, desiring, and being excited about what it is you do?
Oh, my God. It goes back decades ago when I hated neurology as a medical student. In fact, I hated it so much that I threw my notes off the balcony of my apartment for my final exam. There was like, no, this isn't, but no, who can know this? This is impossible. Well, obviously I retrieved them. And then it was sometime later, when I was rotating through as a medical student in neurology, when Dr. William McKinney came up and he put his arm around me and he said, you know, Rick, I went by Rick at that point, you know, Rick, you've got a real knack for this. We're going to send you to a scholarship to Queen's Square. And that's the English place for neurology. And they did. And so all of a sudden, and it was earlier than that. I was reading through a textbook late at night, 1 o'clock in the morning, reading through all these tiresome diseases that one could hardly pronounce, and I came across aphasia, which is a loss of language, and I thought, oh my God, people, they couldn't speak, they could move their tongue, they could make sounds, but they couldn't speak or they couldn't understand what was being said to them. And I laughed out loud. And that's when I thought, oh shit, I'm supposed to hate this stuff. And so that's when neurology picked me, really. And I have always been interested in what are called higher cortical functions, or the things that make us, not reflexes and pig pricks and all that kind of stuff, but the things that are what make us human.
Yeah. It makes sense to me now, not that the audience would know too much, but, your current book that you're working on that is more of the fictitious side of things, but I can see how those things come together, your sense of humor and the fascination with the sciences and how we function and work, and, I get it, neurological aspects of us, it's a very in-depth study, and it can be terrifying to many.
Well, I'm glad if it is. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is fascinating to say the least. So, going into a lot of the studies when it comes to tech addiction, for
Mhm.
instance, this is the last book that that we get the pleasure of having in our universe. Thank you very much, because it's right at current trends, right? We all have this tech addiction. We all have a phone. Globally, primarily, most of the world has access to all of these things. And so it is on the rise of top consideration of how is this affecting us as human beings, and especially children.
That was one of the things that really interested me in doing this book in the first place, is that years ago, about 5 years ago, before anybody was really talking about this, I was looking at this iPhone of mine. And I thought, my God, this thing is so distractive. Um, what's going on here? And that's really the question that I asked, is that why is this device so distractive? I mean, it wasn't years and years ago. My husband and we only had track phones to make the occasional outgoing call. We did. Who was going to call us? Nobody. And we were in New York one time, and we were trying to find an address for someplace or other, and we couldn't. And so at that point, all the phone books had been ripped out of the city, and you couldn't find any place to find a map. And we looked at each other and said, we have got to get an iPhone, if only for the maps. And so we did. And then within 2 days of having my new iPhone, it's like, I thought, oh my God, I know, I can see why this thing is so addictive. It's like an endless scroll for a jackpot thing here. So that was the first inkling when I thought, wow, this stuff is really bad.
It is. It's easy to forget what life was like prior to it. It's
Yes.
amazing.
Oh, it is.
So
Yes.
where we had to read maps, and you knew what a map key was because you had to read maps and
If we knew what a paper map was, yes.
or asking the gas attendant on which direction we're going when we're on a road trip, and
Exactly.
really
Yes.
knowing how to read the roadways, and the way that we function as humans are our focus has changed so drastically because of that. Also, it's more of that narrow focused as opposed to that broadened where we're really getting bigger pictures. And so how is that relating to driving and accidents, fatalities, all of those things based on the mass amount of distraction and the narrow-mindedness
It's all
that
related, yes.
right. What were some of the major findings that you found with your studies for this?
Well, that distraction is so inbuilt in us, and I have a chapter that's called, sharks kill more people than selfies do. Um, uh, no, I'm sorry, selfies kill more people than sharks do. And that people who are taking selfies and who walk at the end of piers and into God knows what dangers, they kill themselves at a greater rate than shark attacks do. And so what struck me was the incredible amount of self-induced distraction that these devices encourage or engender.
Yeah. So have you seen more statistics that, I mean, obviously you've done more research and had statistics in that regard. What are some other things that were really mind-blowing to you that you wouldn't have thought otherwise that came to the forefront for you? And that said too, what were some of the things that you felt if there was a tweak or a change that could happen that it would be alleviated?
Well, one of the things that really struck me is the reduction in the ability to read among young people. Is that they can't read because they're exposed to one screenful at a time. They're not used to longer excerpts or even a book. They don't have the patience to read a book. They want to have things fed to them, one screenful at a time. And so, is it anyone? So you can't read the Red Badge of Courage or the Catcher in the Rye because it's too long. And so you've got these young people who have missed out on learning how to read long form fiction, and that's part of the slow below screen epoch that we're in. Is that if you can only read things one screenful at a time, then how are you ever going to learn how to read long form fiction? And this is what people talk about. You hear it all the time. You talk about people talking about critical thinking and connecting the dots. Well, it's fine if you have dots to connect, but if you don't have dots to connect, then what are you supposed to be doing? And so, for those of us who are older, and we have history and a background of reading things, then in the back of our minds, we always have facts stored in the back of our minds that we just sort of filter away, and those are the dots that we have to connect. But if you have grown up in a culture where you don't have that, then you don't have any dots to connect. So how are you supposed to learn anything?
So you're saying that the ability to learn things in general overall is challenged.
It is, yes, I think, and I think this is really pathetic. I don't know what today's educators are thinking, because they're not encouraging students to learn anything in terms of current events or history or whatever. They simply have no dots to connect.
Mm. We'll definitely taking in information differently and at a more rapid pace. Do you feel that that could be a way of learning in a sense, but just differently, where the information
Well,
is
I,
just
I
coming
think
in?
I think it's okay to learn at a different pace and all that, but you still have to learn it. You have to learn basic fundamentals, and so if you don't learn uh, basic facts of history or religion or whatever you're studying, then you have no dots to connect.
Yes, that makes
You have no facts to connect.
right. And that said too, not
Because,
knowing
because
history.
people say, oh, I can always look it up on Google. Well, yes, that's true. But how do you know what to look up? If you don't know something about the Civil War or whatever the topic is, if you don't know anything about that, then what topic are you going to look up? Because you don't know. You have nothing to look up.
Mm, that makes sense.
Yeah,
There's no root
this is what I mean
foundations
by
of
no dots to connect.
right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Uh, Dr. Cytowic, we're going to move into our commercial. When we get back, I would love to dive further into what this has to do with children and why it matters so much for our basic human survival and basic instincts. So stay tuned.
My pleasure.
Are you ready to take control of your ride to wellness? Rev up with Driven Living. Visit www.drivenliving.com and buckle up for a journey. Get exclusive access to our Wellness Driven Life Show guest portal, where you can dive deep into the minds of our esteemed guests. Sign up for our newsletter and get insider scoops on these distinguished personalities. It's like having a backstage pass to their life-changing wisdom. But that's not all. You'll also receive a free hug. You heard me right, a free hug. An enlightening ebook from the Driven Living team. Discover the science-backed benefits of hugging yourself. It's a fill-up for your wellness tank. Because at Driven Living, we believe in fueling your journey to wellness, both physically and psychologically. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.drivenliving.com today.
Welcome back, everyone, here with the incredible Dr. Cytowic. Great conversation revolving around tech addiction, virtual autism, which I'm very curious on. Let's dive into that definition, and also our brain energy. You know, when we talk about all of the energy that we have, the finite aspects of that, what does that look like when we all, many of us have this tech addiction, unless we start bringing in some really key factors into life where we hone that down, or have certain time frames. I would love to know your suggestions, Dr. Cytowic, but let's dive in a little bit further into those concepts.
Okay. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with the virtual autism aspect of things.
Well, virtual autism is the induction of autistic-like symptoms in otherwise normal people who are exposed heavily to screens. Now, in developmental autism, which occurs naturally in young children, this never goes away. It never reverses over time. Once the symptoms become clear, they stay the same for years and years and years. However, virtual autism, which is the induction of autistic-like symptoms in otherwise normal people, if you take the screens away from them for just, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks, they all go away. And this never happens in natural autism. And this was first noticed in Romanian psychologists who dealing with children in orphanages who noticed that the screen exposure was causing these kinds of symptoms. So that's virtual autism, and it can happen. It happens, of course, most easily in children, teenagers, but also in adults. And so all you have to do is take the screens away. And of course, if you try to do that, everybody screams and says, "No, you can't. Give me that thing." We've all seen young children who are so addicted to their PlayStations and screens, and if you try to take the screen away, they have this hysterical meltdown. And it's like, okay, why is that? Well, that tells you that something really bad is going on if they can't stand to be without their screen.
Well, I love that there is a solution to the
Yes.
problem, and that what a nice, easy way to really have a better understanding if your child is in fact autistic or not, if it's just the virtual autism or the latter. So I think that is a really wonderful way to be able to understand the difference.
I mean, this is so easy for parents to do. Just take the screen device away, and you're gonna encounter an incredible tantrum about why they can't and all that. And all that proves is that
it's a good sign.
Is that they really are addicted. I mean, if you want proof, there it is.
Absolutely. And it made me think, Dr. Cytowic, that as a parent, I have 3 daughters, and there's certain foods that you'll notice where they're hyped up, right? So we stayed a lot away from candies, red dyes.
Yeah.
And so because they have an effect on us, and tech is no different. The screen is no different. If we're sitting there then and just concentrating on one thing for way too long, there's nothing natural about that. So something that I'd be very curious about knowing from your research is, what does that do to us on a biological level when we have so much of the screen time? What does that do to us biologically?
Well, first of all, I appreciate so much that your parents' perspective of knowing what affects your daughters and all that. So the question is really, how does all this affect us?
Yes.
Well,
what are the damages? What are the big? Yes.
It has made our attention spans go to hell. I think everybody appreciates that. And it has made us immune almost, or inured to the fact that even though we're addicted to these things, we say, "Oh no, I'm not." It's that we just deny the bad effects. And I think that's even worse in itself.
And also another sign, denial, right?
Yes, denial, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm fine. Okay, I know I'm not addicted. Fine. Yeah, denial is a great sign. So anytime you come up with denial, that means that you've hit the nail on the head.
So there's definitely some signs and symptoms that that maybe you need to make a change and a shift. Go get some nature, and when you are going to take that break and vacation from work, actually do it and do it right. Break free from all of those things. Share with us a little bit, Dr. Cytowic, of Cytowic, excuse me. What does it do with the energy aspects of the brain? Do you mind explaining that to the audience a little bit more of how the brain works and functions energetically?
Well, I think it'll surprise most people to learn that we have a fixed energy bandwidth that we operate in, and that no amount of diet, exercise, or Sudoku puzzles is ever going to increase that, despite claims to the contrary. And so we have to learn to live within that bandwidth that we have available. And so, for example, my talking to you one-on-one eats up about half the amount of bandwidth that I have available. So that trying to talk to two people, trying to listen to two people at the same time is nigh impossible, because I've exceeded the buffer that I have to work with.
Wow.
So I think just understanding that that we do have these limits, and that learning to live within them is extremely important.
Well, it makes sense to me, and I feel not so abnormal when I do feel drained sometimes when you have conversations with many people, or especially if you're in, a crowded area with many people. So all of that, the bandwidth really
Exactly.
depletes.
Yes.
What are some of the things that you do, Dr. Cytowic, on a regular basis to help maintain those energies for yourself?
Well, I have to set limits on my engagement. So, for example, I mean, I get I don't know, hundreds of emails a day. So I log on and check them at 4 or 5 a.m. I get up. That's how early I get up. Sorry, I'm an old person. That's when I get up, and I'll answer them all. And then I won't check again until 4 or 5 p.m. And so if you can't get me between those hours, then you're not going to get me. And so what's the big deal? What am I missing? I'm not missing anything. If you want to reach me, you will eventually be able to reach me. So it's a question of, why should I be available 24/7 every minute of the day to everybody else's demands? And it's like, that's crazy. I'm not going to do that. And so that's one thing that helps maintain my composure, really. And the other is learning how to say no. Again, I get so many demands, and it's like, do I really want to say yes to this one, that one, the other one, or just is like, thank you, but no. And learning to say no is a wonderfully liberating thing to be able to do. In fact, I have a whole book that I wrote called Learning to Say No. Yeah, it's. I think that's really. I think that's a great skill to have.
It is. And did it take a while for you to learn how to say no comfortably?
Well, I mean, I'm 72 years old, so yes, yes, it took me a while, but finally, it stuck, and I learned how to do it. So, but it took me decades to learn how to do that.
Dr. Cytowic, I love your what you have gifted us with today, and I feel doubly honored to have you here on the Wellness
You're
Driven
so
Life
kind.
Show,
Yeah.
because I was the chosen one for your time, and so we appreciate you greatly. You've given us some really great tips and tricks, especially for parents, for all of us. Really, it's not just for our children, but it's for all of us to really have this understanding of what tech can do, and that it's a beautiful day and age to be living in. And just like with anything, there's consequences. There was consequences of living hundreds of years ago. It's just dealing with the things that we have and that we're working with within our environment and the world that we live in. And so managing those, maintaining those, being smart about those, and disconnecting, in order to have revitalized energy, so to speak. And so I think that's brilliant that you offer those pieces of just backing off a little bit, saying no, really learning how to and finding time to disconnect for longer periods of time, like those week-long periods of time, especially. That's much easier with children. I know I said easy, parents, and it can be easy if you just get into the routine of it, right? Because we are the ones in charge of them, whereas work, it's a little more difficult because that may be, the world operates online and on the computers and all of those things.
I couldn't have said it better.
Thank you. I want to make sure that everyone knows where to find you. I've had it displayed here on the screen a few times.
I'm here. Here I am.
At 4 a.m. or 4 p.m. Just what time zone?
I'm in Eastern Daylight Time.
That's perfect. So Eastern, 4 a.m. Check out his website, cytowic.net. I have it displayed here on the screen for those of you listening, cytowic.net. It is also going to be in the description below. I'm so excited about your books. I am most excited about getting my hands on, well, two of them, and the one that we didn't have our topic on, and I'd have to go find it and see if I can say it right.
Yes.
Let's see. I don't have it here.
Synesthesia.
Synesthesia.
That's that's a really short. That's a small compendium by MIT Press, part of their sexual knowledge series. And it's when everybody tells me, tell me more. I need more information. That's where I send people to the synesthesia compendium at MIT Press. And then, of course, now Stone Age, your Stone Age brain and the Screen Age.
Right. And that was the topic of conversation today, which is an imperative conversation. And so I really appreciate your time with that today. What are you most excited about creating next?
Oh, well, I'm a scientific advisor for a Los Angeles screenwriter who's doing a pilot for a piano wire killer who also has synesthesia, and he's the protagonist as a Palestinian psychologist. So that's really exciting. And the other is that a co-author of mine and I are writing this thing about a suspense thriller that also involves murder and all sorts of horrible things. So, you're gonna think I'm just an axe murderer here, hiding out in the closet. But anyway, that's what we do. It's creativity. We think of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is absolutely beautiful. And, in all the different ways. I come from a law enforcement background. So when you see so many horrific,
yeah,
you see, when you see a lot of things in the world, you have to have, a way to deal with that on a more, you have to be really light about it. Otherwise, it just eats you up alive. You have to have a different aspect about it. And I love the scientific pieces. I really wanted to initially go into forensic entomology because that fascinated me. So yeah, it makes sense to me, and maybe not all of our viewers, but I think it's just wonderful, all of the things that you're doing, and especially bringing within of those new works, that the creative works that you're doing, all of the knowledge that you have to be able to bring in on the story front to those is going to be really, really cool. So I'm excited to dive into those as well.
Much. It helped to get an MFA. That's when I went back to school. When I was in my 50s, I went back to school to get an MFA degree. And it was great. I really loved doing that. And it's been a great help.
Oh, that's amazing. You're so full of surprises. So, Dr. Cytowic, is there anything else you want to share with our audience today?
I can't think of anything other than, read my book, have fun with it, enjoy it. You'll be surprised at what you'll learn by it.
And I couldn't agree with that more with this conversation. You'll be surprised by what you learn. Thank you again for being our guest.
I always am surprised at what I learn. So thank you.
My pleasure. And thank you to the audience, because without you, the show wouldn't be possible. So goodbye for now, and we will see you next time.